Hello, I'm Lucille Gang Schulklapper, welcoming you to the third episode of Edgewater Poets and inviting you to join us. I'd like to thank Alyssa Zemmering, our producer, for making this program possible. You know that poetry brings us together. As a young girl, I dreamed of becoming a writer, but reality intervened. Though having written since the age of 6, I was never published until I was 60. 2.5 decades later, my poetry and fiction appear in literary journals and anthologies, as well as in 5 poetry books and a picture book titled Stuck in Bed Red, about a big candy dragon who is hungry and stuck in bed, which Sheila Duchin is selling in the Cove. I have been, as you can see, and still am, fulfilling my dream. The poem I chose to read today is by Langston Hughes, titled Dreams. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow.
Hello, my name is Louis Hecker, and I'm going to read a poem by William Blake. Mr. Blake was born to a working-class family in 1757 and died in 1827. Not only is he a famous English poet, but he was a famous English artist whose paintings, etchings, and prints are displayed in museums all around the world. The poem I'm going to read is called Tiger, Tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What a immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire, with the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain, what furnace was in thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? And when the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Thank you.
Hi there. I'd like to read you a poem from one of my favorite authors. It's Maya Angelou, When Great Trees Fall. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
Hello, I'm Judy Evans, and I live happily here in the C building at Edgewater. Before I read this poem to you, I'd like to explain a little what it's all about. It was written by my British aunt, Mrs. Marjorie Corbett, and so it's very personal to me. In 1940, when I was 2 weeks old and my cousin John was 6 weeks old, we were bombed in the house we lived in. Our mothers, both school teachers, had moved from the London Blitz to Birmingham in the Midlands of England to get relief from the bombing further south. Then the attacks started on several more northerly industrialized cities, and just after we were born, a bomb fell directly on our house. Our mothers, with us newborn babies, hid under the stairs, and amazingly, we were saved. The lady next door was killed, and 6 row houses were demolished. In today's unsettling and unsettled world, when I look back at this poem, I find that despite dark days, can come life and happiness. In our present weeks of pandemic and social unrest, we must look positively to the future and remember there is always room for change and hope for a better life ahead. Now to the poem. It's called First Night of the Birmingham Blitz, November 19th, 1940, written by my aunt Marjorie Corbett. What tempered anguish that lugubrious night, when in the wake of sirens' mournful wail, death-laden squadrons droned in flight on flight, great fire and devastation in their trail. As man unleashed his hell on fellow man, with thud and crump the fearful weapons spawned, so many alive, God knows when night began, entombed or blasted lay when daylight dawned. 2 babes there were, dashed down amongst the rubble, whose tiny hands tenacious hold on life, brought hope and that conflicts but the spirit's trouble. Deliverance one day shall come from strife. Bear witness then, mid all earth's heinous slaughter, thou cherished son, thou most beloved daughter.
Hello, I'm Gerald Evans, also from the C Building. I'd like to read 2 short poems by a man called John Masefield, who was the Poet Laureate of the United Kingdom from 1930 until he died in 1967. Masefield, as a young man, had roamed the oceans of the world, and he loved the sea, as you'll hear reflected in these 2 poems. The first is called Cargoes. It tells the story of 3 different vessels in 3 different periods of time and 3 different parts of the world. Quinquirim of Nineveh, from distant Ophir, rowing home to haven in sunny Palestine with a cargo of ivory and apes and peacocks, sandalwood, cedarwood, and sweet white wine. Stately Spanish galleon coming from the isthmus, dipping through the tropics by the palm green shores, with a cargo of diamonds, emeralds and amethysts, topaz and cinnamon, and gold moidores. Gritty British coaster with a salt-caked smokestack, butting through the channel in the mad March days with a cargo of Tyne coal, road rails, pig lead, firewood, ironwood, and cheap tin trays. Cargoes by John Masefield. The second poem is called Sea Fever, and it's written by someone who obviously loved the sea, was on land and would like to go back. It's called Sea Fever, and it begins, I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels kick, and the wind song, and the white sails shaking, and a grey mist on the sea's face, and the grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call, and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying, and the flung spray, and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trick is over.
I am an audience of one, as my dear friend Arnie Lerner plays the piano for my enjoyment. It is not unusual for us to hear the rain pounding on the roof of the lobby. Please listen for the raindrops as I read Lucille Gang Shulklapper's homage to Chopin's Raindrop Prelude. The language of music, Raindrop Prelude. Blinding rain flashes down tree fronds. In their descent, they drunkenly swerve, windblown across the lanes, beaten by cars trying to escape them. A storm at its birth, with the pitter-patter of childhood steps, soft raindrops, until midlife drenching at their end, decay. Chopin loved George Sand. He was 39 when he died. Daddy was 53. Mother was 92. My sister Judith was 39. My husband Alvin was 80. In my night, I dream about him. Who is it, I call out, hearing the doorbell ring. Panic, so frightened. Why can't he find his key? And I leap out of bed when I can barely walk, and the floor is so cold that it wakes me like the hand of my mother. And I know no one is there. Judith and I rode our secondhand bicycles with balloon tires to the library. She loved books. I loved the rows of them. We had baskets on our bikes to carry them home. I loved the unspoken words I would never hear. The boy who cried wolf, the wicked stepmothers, the little red hen, or was that Henny Penny when the sky was falling, or the middle section of Chopin's Prelude. Sad and dismal as a Persian lamp coat with matching hat mother wore and the wrinkled khaki dress I wore to Daddy's funeral. Open the coffin, I begged. I want to see Daddy's face. I stood alone and looked. Years later, my 4-year-old son at the graveside of his 4-year-old cousin, the coffin lowered into the ground. The handful of dirt thrown shoveled. His little hand in mine said, I wish there was such thing. It was raining. You know the idiom, it never rains but it pours. Judith wandered out into a cloud-stricken sky in her nightgown. Later, institutionalized, thy psychiatric wing behind heavy wooden locked doors could not be pushed. We sat on a stone step. She cried, wanted to die. I tried to find words. They kept repeating themselves. Her husband brought her to our home every weekend, along with my in-laws, who brought sandwiches from the deli laden with tongue, corned beef, crunchy, salty pickles, unspoken words like rows of books. Chopin played piano in small recital halls, soft pedaled, then harder, varying the time notes were held, released until the raindrops sped in crescendo. Judith died on a bus. The sky blackened. Thunder held its own. Lightning gave chase. The roads were flooded. Chopin dreaded playing in concert halls, which his rivals embraced. I hid in dark spaces behind rows of books, screamed on paper. Judith planted showy flowers, loved wide ranges, threw tantrums. From inside my rotisserie, Judith cries. I hear her through my tempered glass. On the holiest day of the Jewish year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, at midnight, lightning struck in the flash of the ambulance. Blazing headlights, thunder in its siren. Alvin died. The quickened slackening of a life, his and mine. Words roll off my tongue. I love you, I love you. Did I tell you enough? Did I kiss you enough? Rows of books, fictions. Please hear me. Please stop the rain. Give me a sign. Tell me what the coda means. Is there really a concluding passage? As the raindrops fall softly and the prelude ends. I was a child playing Chopin on the upright knobby, now with broken keys. I am a friend, afraid to fall.
Hello, I'm Kinderson Jean Phillip, and I'm reading a poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for the passing there, had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. And telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two worlds diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This poem was made by Robert Frost. He had a friend back in England, and this is what the story is usually about. He and this man named Thomas in England would travel across the country and he would usually have walk and talks where he would talk about birds and other things like that. He would see flowers and all of that. And there was this road that diverged. He would take one, but always dreamed about the other. What the poem meant to me and what others have given meaning by is the right and wrong paths in lives. But I think it's a little bit different for me. The road less traveled by others is a road of risk, a road of where have not been traveled by most, but that's the path I choose to take myself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sonny Dashow, and I'm very pleased to be here to read to you Lucille Gang Schulkapper's poem.